everyone. My name is Ann Simonton, and I'm the producer of Moving Forward. For our next two programs, we're going to highlight three amazing progressive candidates who are running for City Council. And they are incumbent Sandy Brown, Kelsey Hill, and Kayla Kumar. The city of Santa Cruz is at a crucial crossroads, and we will either become a developer's paradise for the wealthy or become a more inclusive city where people from a variety of backgrounds and economic levels can live and work together. Today, my co-host will be Rick Longinati, who's co-chair for the Campaign for Sustainable Transportation. Thanks so much for joining us, Rick. And let's start with the first question. And each candidate will have 2.5 minutes to respond to this. Now, I've heard each of you have experienced multiple hardships when you were young. I was wondering if you could share with our audience something about that and what that experience has taught you that would be valuable in your service for the City Council. So let's start with Sandy Brown.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So so just a little bit about my experience. When I was 15, became homeless due to a fire. And I was on my own really until I came to, well, I've been on my own ever since. So I experienced insecurity and instability at a very young age. And I remember really, really vividly, viscerally what it was like to live with that insecurity. And it was very difficult to keep my head on straight. It was difficult to get through the things I needed to get through. I was able to do it, but I was only able to do it because of the kind of mutual aid kind of support that I received from people in my community. And so I think that one of the big lessons for me was that we need to take care of each other. I know that sounds very, obvious, but it's not obvious. And when we're at City Hall and the decisions are made based upon, the status quo, the way things have always been, we're not thinking about the ways that providing services and providing kind of alternatives to the kind of move along policies and the kinds of, the enforcement that makes people so uncomfortable and makes people feel insecure. That is not a way to promote community safety. And the way to do that is really by providing those supports and helping people stabilize their lives. I've seen what the city has done with respect to, our unhoused community members. It has been ticket citations piling up and move along. And, to the extent that we have, occasionally dipped our toe in the water of, providing some kind of managed encampment locations and operational support, we have seen that it is effective. And then despite that being effective, we then say, well, this is over, that and I've received messages that people are being told at the benchlands that they're, October 1, you're done, right? And they're still there, but it's like everybody is just always living with this anxiety, which is totally unnecessary. People have it's hard enough to get through, to survive when you're living on the margins. So again, I just think that community stability is the most critical thing. And I think we can do better.
Yeah, thank you. Kelsey, could you go next?
Yeah, thank you. I want to start by saying good morning, everyone. So my personal backstory is really impacted by the 2008 financial crisis. I grew up lower income, but we always were able to keep our head above water in terms of having enough to pay bills, keep food on the table. I was on food stamps for most of my younger years, but in 2008, my parents were evicted due to the financial crisis. It was right around Christmas time. My dad's union job was contracted out. My mom was laid off from her optician job. And as a result, I dealt with housing insecurity for the entirety of my high school career and I took a gap year between high school and college and into that time. And so what I really experienced then, I was lucky to never be totally unsheltered, but there were nights that I slept in cars. I spent time in motels. I borrowed my friends' laptops and slept on their couches to make sure that I could go to drama after school or speech and debate or whatever I was doing. And what that really taught me is that, similar to what Sandy said, having community around me and having the support structure of after school programs, of friends, of family that were willing to take care of me during this difficult time really enabled me to be successful in my later years. Coming to Santa Cruz, I really had very little in terms of resources, and I was able to build up a life here because of the support during those difficult times. And I want to also say that, I was meant to become a statistic in some capacity. If you look at the resources that are typically available to people in my situation, kind of the story of my parents, and what my mom is still dealing with now, even 12 years later. I wasn't meant to be as successful as I am now. Rent is still really difficult to pay in Santa Cruz. I still have moments where that past kind of flurries up. But the moral of the story here is that when we take care of folks in our community, they can really strive, really hit their stride and succeed to the point that they're running for elected office and they're providing a voice to folks who are experiencing similar difficulties in their personal backstory. And what this grounds for me in terms of my role on the city council is that when we create a culture that really cultivates and nurtures our community, especially our youth, our whole community is better for it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll stop there.
That's
Thanks.
beautiful. Thank you so much, Kayla. And let's hear from, Kelsey, Kayla. Let's hear from Kayla. Kayla now.
Kayla here.
Kayla, Kelsey.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Anne and Rick, and Sandy and Kelsey. Thank you for sharing your stories. I know it's, the funny thing about politics that I'm learning is it's really tempting to just go with the script. Because you talk to a lot of people and it's safe. And what I've noticed about these three candidates is we go deeper than that and we're willing to share really the truth about ourselves, because when you're asking the people to trust you, you have to trust them back. I think that's how one way trust is created. And so thank you for giving us that opportunity. For me at 15, I left home. It was a broken home to begin with. We were in poverty, living in Boise, Idaho. And I left home because my home was unsafe. And I had a twin sister and older brother. We all went to different places. Being separated from my sister remains something that I still can't process, especially at such a young age. And, for me, I immediately started lashing out behaviorally. I started getting in little, bits of trouble here and there, drinking at a school dance kind of thing. And just really trying to work through my trauma in ways that were deliberately destructive to myself, because that was the story that I was internalizing by being dislocated from stability and from safety. And so, I think at the same time, I was also living this other life where I was like doing really good in school and the captain of the tennis team and on the basketball team and in the clubs and stuff. And so, for me, at the same time, I couldn't get my permission slips signed for field trips because I didn't have parents. I couldn't get my FAFSA signed because I didn't have parents. All these little things that I sometimes didn't have shelter because I didn't have, I remember growing up and it was crazy. I was like, I'm doing all the things that they tell you to do. I study hard, I work hard. I get, I have a little bit of a teenage like weekend drink here. So I'm not an angel, but I generally do the things that I'm supposed to do. And this system still doesn't really know what to do with me. The systems that we live in are not made for people like me that don't have that steady, circle of support around them. And much like Sandy and Kelsey described, I bounced around. I was every day, I was aware that my sense of stability depended on, it was conditional. It depended on, was I good enough? Was I playing hard enough? Was I, working hard enough? And, as a young person, this is why I work with young people, and I have for my entire career, is because I know what it's like when you start internalizing those narratives. I didn't learn from being, insecure as a teenager that I had what it takes to do whatever I wanted. What I learned was that I was not good enough, that the system didn't see me, that I was different and other than. And it wasn't until my community stepped in and stabilized me, which took years. It wasn't until I got that extra layer of community support that I was able to look back and see the resilience of it all. And so
Thank
for
you
me,
so much,
yeah,
Kayla. Yeah, that's fantastic.
yeah.
Rick, maybe you could chime in here.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy and Kelsey and Kayla for these stories. It really helps me to paint a picture of your commitment to the common good. People who think they raise themselves up by their bootstraps don't necessarily think about the common good, but people like you who attribute it to community, that's helps me trust, really. So this question is really kind of related, I guess. It's how do you feel when you see people who are homeless, and then in our community here, we can only do what the local community can do, right? We need federal and state help to address this issue, but what can we do as a local community? So Sandy, would you go first?
Thanks. So yeah, first I want to say, thank you to everybody, and I really enjoyed talking with you all, and so I'm glad we're doing it here this morning. And so much of what you both just said really resonated with me. I mean, Kayla, you're being able to get your financial aid signed for to go to school and all of those things. It's I experienced all of that, and that sense that if I mess up in any way, that I'm going to be rejected, right? So I just wanted, that really hit me, and I wanted to say that before I carry on, because it does affect how I think about seeing people on the streets. I mean, it is it's incredibly sad. It makes me sad, but it also makes me feel like pushing back. I mean, I talked with a friend about this who is not necessarily, I didn't expect this kind of response, but he said, well, I'm kind of I'm glad it's visible, because it's helping. It tells us that we are collectively failing our community, right? It's our collective failure that has led to this kind of situation. And while the city cannot address that all on its own, we have a responsibility to create spaces where people can feel safe. And like I said on the previous question, stability is so important. So when I see, people talk about the tents that are kind of lining up under the, how many people housed, over at the intersection at Highway 9 and 1, and it's like, it's just the contradiction, the irony of it is so disturbing. It's so profoundly disturbing to me that it just makes me want to work harder to try to change the system, and to help people with the idea that what we're doing isn't working, so let's do something different, not more of what has not been working.
Thank you. Yeah. Kelsey?
Thanks. I want to start this answer with a story from my business life. So I was on a business trip to Boston with a Lakota woman from South Dakota, lives in a fairly impoverished part of our country. And we passed by a gentleman who was sleeping in an alcove of a business, and she turned to me and she said, that would never happen back home. And she's coming from a place that is usually used as a statistic of how bad the federal government is at taking care of Native Americans, particularly near the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. And for me, I think about that a lot when I'm walking downtown, when I'm walking near the river, because it has really shown that our society, one that prioritizes profit and private property over human life, has really failed to meet the needs of ensuring well-being and health for our residents. And in echoing what was said before, I'm glad that we are at a point where folks are really starting to deeply engage with this issue and engage with the complexity of houselessness. As I mentioned in my personal story, it's something that's very close to my heart. And I think that what we need to do is we really need to be using the housing first approach. We need to be seeing these people as people, because that's what they are, or who they are. And I'm supportive of, really putting pedal to the metal when it comes to getting them into transitional housing, into supportive housing. I would like to see the COVID-19 infrastructure that we've created throughout the course of this pandemic expanded. And I think that city leaders need to be, versus just using houselessness as a talking point, we really need to be effectively and aggressively combating the houseless crisis and coming from a place of compassion, not just a city emergency.
Thank you. Kayla.
Yeah, when I see folks that are living on the streets, I feel deep sadness. I also see myself. I see again, building off of what I was sharing earlier, I see a place I could have easily been. And I don't see these folks as like others or people I need to fix or anything like that. I see folks that came to a place in their life where they needed that extra layer of community and they didn't get it. And that makes me really sad. And so again, like, kind of wrapping up, that's what I bring to any of these issues, is like this sense of, I try to see myself, I try to see the whole in every policy, every situation. I try to see the collective well-being. Here, I have to agree. I think the platitudes from the city for generations this is a natural result of when you don't do anything or when you just move people around. This is what we can expect when we continue to do the same thing. You get the same thing. So, I'll just drill in. I think the way that we've asked mass policing to solve homelessness against mass policing's own will, against like all of the data, all of the compassion that exists in our city. That would be one of the first things that I would address, is we cannot continue to mismatch policing with as if it's addressing homelessness. We need a response that is actually a response, something that understands the unique needs of folks who are living on the streets or transitioning out. And I think I only have a little bit of time, but I also want to say, accessing resources in this community, if you're a person without shelter, is really difficult, and it's very disjointed, the social service field. And it's not a result of the nonprofits, it's because they're not funded, and because we don't have a kind of unifying, something like a navigation center. So I'm pretty sure I'm over my time, but happy to dive deeper if that works.
Thank you, all of you. The council recently approved the concept of building a very large parking structure in the downtown, along with a library and a few units of affordable housing. And as a result of that decision, a lot of people, I think the majority of people in the community, feel that their interests have not been heeded, that they've not been taken into account. There was not an effort to incorporate the concerns of the wider community. So the question is, when this kind of issue comes up, where there are major segments of the community that are not involved in a consensus, what do you do? Sandy, would you go first?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I, as you all know, and just for the audience, I was on the subcommittee of the City Council that considered what to do about the downtown library after a decision had already been made that was to build a library parking garage structure on the farmers market lot. And So we went, kind of back to the table, I guess, and tried to reset that process. What I found during the subcommittee meetings and the kind of all of the activities that we engaged in, what I found was that I came back around to the same perspective that I had been hearing from the community in, that people did not vote for to tax themselves for a garage, and that they felt very frustrated. In the process, I consistently asked for information, financial information, to demonstrate that we could actually get affordable housing into the project. And to me, it was like, that was just an afterthought, that they thought, well, this is a way to get more support since we don't really we have not demonstrated there is support in the community. And but then it was never clear, and they, never provided any information on financial feasibility. In addition to, for people who say they want to be data driven and evidence based, a refusal to revisit and actually look at the parking study that had been done by a consultant that the city paid for, and they didn't like the result, so they kind of decided to look at a different model. And so I just never saw anything to suggest that this project was one, even if I had supported the concept, that it would work. And I also disagree that we need, to be building for cars in the downtown. I think we need to be building housing for people. Housing cars in downtown makes no sense to me whatsoever. So, in all of that, I decided that I would, I would just stick with the community. I want to say one more thing really quickly about this. And I feel, having now walked precincts and been talking on the phone with voters, I feel like my sense of it was absolutely spot on. I have not heard anybody say, why didn't you support the mixed use project? Everybody's asking me, how can we stop it?
So Kelsey.
I think the garage library mixed use project is a really great example of, or unfortunately a great example of, what happens when we have this barrier to communication between city staff and the public. In talking to community members, when I'm phone banking or canvassing, I've encountered a similar sentiment. And I also think that when we have a city government that is so clearly not interested in the will of the people and is so clearly bent on condescending the community and saying, no, we know better than you, it pushes people farther away for meaningful engagement. It widens that barrier between both of those parties. And as an elected leader, one thing that I'd be really set on doing is making sure that the study groups, the workshops, even the council meetings as they are in COVID-19 are more accessible to the general public, that we're really investing in more robust, more comprehensive ways of engaging with the community. Drilling in on the point about the Zoom meetings and for the city council meetings during COVID-19, that model is not working for a lot of people. And I think that we could be doing a better job of just engaging the public on these really controversial issues, and just sitting in the last couple meetings. Sandy Brown has brought up, there's people that weren't able to get on the phone and they weren't able to make their public comment. So then they have to go back and get them back on the line. And right now, the status quo as it is, we shouldn't have to be living in a city where it's developer v. public. That is a binary that the community, the voters did not choose. And I think that we need political leaders who will really set out to break that barrier down, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Kelsey. Kayla?
Yeah, I feel so revved after listening to you all talk about this topic. I just echo all those sentiments that have been shared. This question is really simple for me. If a large majority of the people don't want a project, my job as a city council member is to fulfill the will of the people. This isn't, just to be clear, I'm not running for city council because I have a bunch of pet projects or projects I want to kill. This isn't about me. I'm running because I believe, coming from a place of community, I have the skills of having complicated conversations with our community. Our community is complicated. We need people who are not afraid of that and can hold the complexity and have it be generative. And that's why I'm running, because that's like my thing. That's, I can do that. And I think that the framing of the question is spot on. I'm also talking to tons of people a week, just kind of the average everyday person of Santa Cruz. And those who do know the project are really, they think I'm talking about something else. They think Measure S is like something different from the library, from the parking. And why wouldn't they? So I just want to say, like, my job as a city council person is really a conduit of the public will and being as true to that will of the people as possible. And again, that's about trust. For me, trust is about being directly in the trenches with the people, side by side with them as they're navigating these topics, as they're learning, being humble and listening, but making sure we're not just listening. That needs to be listening without action is I don't why. So that's a little bit about how I would approach that.
Seconds left. So each of you take about 40 seconds to say the endorsements that you have that you're feeling proud about.
Well, I am really proud to have endorsements from a wide variety of organizations, kind of a green-blue coalition, labor unions, the Monterey Bay Labor Council, the Building and Construction Trades Council, the Sierra Club, the Campaign for Sustainable Transportation, many individuals who are really community minded. I think that the reason that we're getting these endorsements is because we really represent the public interest.
Thank you. Kelsey?
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm also very proud to be backed by the workers that keep this city running in the labor unions. I also am particularly proud of having the backing of Santa Cruz for Bernie, the People's Democratic Club, and DSA, which are all groups that are continuously advocating for the better good.
I too am just honored and humbled to have the endorsements of labor, of those community groups, like Santa Cruz for Bernie, and DSA in particular. I want to also add that I have the endorsement of a bunch of community organizers, virtually almost everyone who's been organizing the Black Lives Matter series of events: Io Banjo, Bella Bonner, Ari Jones, Tyree Ritchie. So the younger BIPOC community as well.
So much. I appreciate it so much. And thank you for joining us on Moving Forward, and look forward to doing a second segment coming up next week.